Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I chat with successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Mark Wainwright, who is a fractional sales leader who walked us through the basics of building a healthy sales pipeline to hit our sales targets, and Lynn Rivest, a business positioning expert who talked us through how we can ensure customers and partners really get what we do so that they can help refer us more business. Very, very important. So if either of those sound interesting to you, please be sure to check out those past episodes on your favorite podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is a fractional CFO agency dedicated to supporting growing B2B service companies. If you're looking to uplevel the financial strategy and leadership in your business, visit claracfo.com to learn more. Or you can also email me directly at hannah@claracfo.com. I'm very excited to have on our show today Dr. Jackie Meyer. Jackie is a CPA and is a pioneering serial entrepreneur and speaker, focusing on practical solutions that enhance tax and financial literacy. As a former founder of an award-winning CPA firm, which she sold in 2022, she now leads TaxPlanIQ, a SaaS tax advisory platform, and is writing a book on the balance sheet of life. Her innovative ROI method of value pricing emphasizes aligning pricing with client value, and she's on a mission to improve health, wealth, and relationships for all. Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
I am very excited to talk to you because you have a lot of experience in things that people don't always have a lot of experience in.
Yes, or are very scared of.
Yes, both. So like two main topics I'd love to dive into today are tax planning, which might have people running, but please don't, because it's very important.
No, it's fun. I promise.
And well, I like to say maybe instead of tax planning, let's just talk about saving money. Okay. Like
Sure,
if
there
you
you
want to
go.
save some money and you don't want to pay the IRS quite so much, then you want to listen to tax planning conversations. And then we also are going to talk about value pricing. And value pricing can seem very scary to people, but also very just opaque. Like we don't really know exactly how to do it. We hear about it a lot. So very excited to have you here talking about both with us today. First of all, I just want to ask how, why, and what drove you to become a CPA?
Oh, goodness. Well, I wanted to be a psychologist growing up. And then I had a family member who was a psychologist, and they were real crazy. So I decided against that. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I knew I wanted to be financially secure and be able to take care of myself. And so went down the finance path in my undergrad, started working for a financial advisor. I probably should have been a financial advisor looking back, but for whatever reason, I started prepping tax returns for this financial advisor and fell in love with it and in love with finding tax strategies, magically finding money legally for people. And
Mm,
then I went back and got my master's in accounting and became a CPA.
nice. I love it. The concept of money and then psychology do cross over like a good bit. And we actually just had a therapist who was an accountant then turned therapist. So like it does happen. And
And
I think
which one is that? I might
um
know them.
yeah,
Is
that
it
was Heather.
Rabina?
No, it was Heather Lowry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll have
she
to
has
connect with her.
yeah,
Yeah,
very cool. Yeah, now she has a money coaching business, and then she has her practice, her therapy
that's
practice. So
very cool.
yeah. Well, I would love to talk about what is the difference. So let me start again. When business owners hire a CPA, oftentimes they think, okay, I'm covered. Now I have hired everything I need in the tax realm because I have a
Uh-huh.
CPA now on my team. I pay a check to a CPA once a year, and I must be getting tax planning, and they're going to do all my taxes for me. But you and I both know that that doesn't mean that you've engaged a tax planner.
Right.
And I'd like you to kind of explain to the listeners the difference between tax preparation and tax planning and how you can know what you've really engaged when you start working with a CPA.
For sure. Yeah. First, I guess higher level, what just came to mind is Similar to working like an insurance agent, we've got 50 different types of insurance that can be offered. So, corporate insurance is not going to be offered by the same people that give you personal or disability insurance or workers' comp and things like that. And that's the same way you should really look at the CPA designation or an accountant or tax person in general. I've been trying to work with our governing orgs to get some more solidarity around what does it mean to be a CPA and what are these subcategories? Because there's just so many you could be.
Yeah.
Tax strategists and advisors is less than like 10% of there's almost 500,000 AICPA members in the world. There's less than 20 to 30,000 that claim to be advisors, and we don't even know how many of those are tax advisors specifically. And
Wow.
so it's a really, really right market. It's what people are wanting, but it's hard to find them. And so you have to ask very specific questions of the practitioner you go to make sure they know what the heck they're talking about and that they're really going to represent you well.
Yeah. What are some of those questions?
Oh, first of all, do you do tax planning? That's a good one to
Yeah.
start.
Straight up.
And a lot of them will say yes when really they just do maybe tax projections. A tax
Mm.
projection is just saying, hey, you're going to owe $10,000 next year. Tax planning is saying you're going to owe 10,000, but I can get that down to 2,000 because of X, Y, and Z strategies that we're going to manage together and work through and implement.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's number one. Very good question. Number two is what are some of your favorite tax strategies? And if they mention things that you already know a lot about, like, oh, I like to tell my clients to fund their IRA at the end of the year or next year, that might not be quite the level of tax strategy that you're looking for. There's kind of different, levels of tax strategy, more advanced people that they can get with it. So yeah, just get a feel for, well, can I understand what they're talking about? Like, am I going to get along with this person or are they like making me fall asleep? And do they have good advanced knowledge and are they passionate about what they bring to the table? So those are really good two ones. And then a third one I would say is just how do you get your education to stay on top of tax planning?
Mm.
And you want to hear that they're going to at least a few conferences a year. They're doing a majority of the CPE, the continuing education they need around tax advisory. And so those three things should really get you a good feel for if they are truly an expert or not.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense because I run into that with clients before where they have, their CPA has made recommendations to them a long time ago that are really based on very old um, rules of thumb, even
Hmm.
not even IRS guidelines, like, S Corps, for example, and reasonable compensation. That is one
Yeah.
that comes up so much where you're supposed to pay yourself if you're taxed as an S corporation, you're supposed to pay yourself a reasonable compensation. And yet people are still using these like old rules of like, well, it's probably fine if you do 60/40 or, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
So I think that's very good to get a sense of, is this person plugged in to new information coming,
Yes.
and what's available. So
Yeah.
is that what your firm did? Did you focus on tax planning at your former CPA firm?
Yeah, I started my firm in 2010 and I kicked off as more of a traditional practice,
Hmm.
but I was always kind of giving away tax ideas and strategies and um was able to acquire clients pretty easily. I think because the passion behind, what I do and that I love it so much. Um but the problem is that traditional firms and the model that goes alongside traditional firms, typically hourly billing or like, oh, I'll charge you 2 grand a year and I'll do your tax return for whatever. It runs us into the ground. It causes a lot of burnout on the accountant side. The clients aren't necessarily getting the high quality that they deserve. And instead, we're trying to like minimize the time that we spend on your work when we should be maximizing it.
Mm.
And so I kind of came to this realization after having kids in 2013 and 2016 that I couldn't be a workaholic anymore. I needed to kind of change something. And so I hired a business coach, Chuck Bauer, and he was like, which clients do you love working with and why? And I was like, I love working with local high net wealth executives. And he's like, well, do you bring a lot of value to the table for them? I'm like, I sure do. And I could be bringing a heck of a lot more, which a lot of accountants feel, but don't necessarily act on. Right. And so he's like, let's develop packages around those people. And then I came up with my own pricing methodology called the ROI method of value pricing, where you charge upfront based on the financial gains you can bring to the table for the client, the complexity of the work, the urgency, the risk, and then what I call intangible benefits like unlimited email assistance, or we meet 4 times a year, or whatever those competitive advantages that I can bring to the table as a firm are. And it revolutionized my firm. My
Mm.
clients loved it. I was like so nervous to be like, hey, I'm changing my practice. I'm leading with tax advisory. You're going to be paying me 3 to 5 times more than you were before. And the very first client that I pitched this to, I was very transparent. I was like, look, you're my guinea pig client. I'm trying this out. He was thrilled. He was like, I've been waiting for you to be able to bring this next level of service to me.
Mm.
And I'm more than happy to pay you more if I know I'm going to get the results. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really win-win. And from there, I was able to get my time down to like 4 hours a week in my firm, which was really insane. Yeah. And the clients were really happy. We standardized so many things. It was just so great. And so I'm a huge advocate for other accountants to follow that pattern because it's so win-win.
Yeah, it is. When you can really recognize what you're bringing to the table, that is huge.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get more into the concept of value pricing and some things to think about while we're doing that. To touch back a little bit on the tax planning piece,
Mhm.
because you mentioned high net worth individuals. When does it make sense for people to start really thinking, I need tax planning? Like, what are some triggers for people to think about? Because sometimes businesses, when they first start, they're thinking they need tax planning. And really they're not even making profits in their
Right.
business. So,
Yeah.
what
So
are some of those things?
it's really straightforward, y'all. If you're gonna owe taxes or you owed taxes, you probably need planning.
Mm.
Now, the unfortunate truth is that there's kind of this break even point of the cost benefit of hiring an expert to do the tax planning or not. So if let's say you owed $2,000 in taxes, it's probably going to cost you at least that to hire a professional to eliminate that $2,000. And so the cost benefit's not there. So it's when you're in higher and higher tax brackets that we can find even more savings per strategy for you and then bring that return on investment to the table. And so at Meyer Tax, my firm, we would do this complimentary proposal for clients and say, hey, I've identified $100,000 a year of tax savings we can estimate for you. Our fee is this, ROI method value priced amount, 20 to 30 grand or something, way more than what they probably ever paid before. But we're getting that immediate 300, 400% ROI, and that continues year to year. And so you're always looking at that cost benefit of like, at what point is this really going to give me the ROI instead of just being an expense?
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So if you are engaged with people or you want to engage with a tax planner, you can start to have those conversations and they should be able to give you some kind of indication. If they don't have any kind of indication of what they could do for you, you might want to try the next person who can give you a little bit of transparency. I think some people are worried potentially about like promises, hey, somebody's going to
Hmm.
promise me they're going to save me a lot of money, give me a big bill, but then not deliver. Um,
Right.
you're a tax planning like expert. So should CPAs be able to give their clients an idea of what they could do? I think that's
Yes, they should be able to quantify tax savings. They should be able to do that cost benefit analysis. They should never guarantee the savings. That's
Mhm.
actually kind of against our ethical guidelines with the AICPA, but you can guarantee a client satisfaction. If you're a good person and you run a good business, no matter what you offer, you can make sure that you make things right if something goes awry. So we had a guarantee in our engagement letters with clients that said, hey, we can't guarantee tax savings, but we can guarantee your satisfaction. And if something really crazy happened, like a client went bankrupt and we couldn't fulfill their plan or something like that, we would do the right thing and figure out how to make that right for the client.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Um, well, if people have questions about tax planning, be sure to put them in the comments of this video, or feel free to email me, or you can probably reach out to Jackie as well. But I would love to know what other questions we have, because I think that this is a topic that we could definitely do another episode on, as people, actually give us your real questions. But
Mhm.
I would love to dive more into that concept of the value pricing. So you saw this as a way for you to really be able to spend the time that you wanted on your clients and to really get them the results that you knew you could. Um, I know that you're helping other firm owners, so accountants, implement this value pricing strategy. Like, what are some of the things that we're not thinking of when we're not using a value pricing strategy, and what should we be thinking if we want to make this shift?
Yeah, I mean, it really so this ROI calculator that I created is for any service provider that is bringing financial gains, financial savings, tax savings, whatever it is. If you can save someone 5 grand, it's just being able to show that. And so it could be a car detail service if you're doing like going the extra mile to take care of really fancy cars or something, and that that's going to reduce their maintenance cost by 15K a year. You can value price that. So
Mm.
it's not necessarily just for the accounting realm. Definitely can be used in CFO services or professional services across the board. But yeah, I would advocate it for anyone to think about, like, what actual return. Well, this is kind of cheesy, but it's like the ROU, right? What is the return on you? Because why not show that, right? You're worth it. If you're bringing that to the table, you should show it to people.
How how do people quantify that though? So let's just say like bookkeeping services, for example. Like I mean, bookkeeping is extremely important. It's
Mhm.
also like one of the things that could be, considered a commodity in
Yeah.
business in a lot of ways. So I would imagine when you think about value pricing, something like bookkeeping, you would want to think about like what happens if you don't have bookkeeping? What's the value of not
Yes.
having bookkeeping?
The
What are
opportunity cost. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the other things that like go into that like thought process?
Yeah. So it is a little harder to kind of wrap your head around the value you bring as a bookkeeper. But at the end of the day, if you look back and you have the financials before you touched them, probably from the client, and then you
Mm.
have what you did to them, and wait a minute. The net income is $30,000 less because I recognized X, Y, and Z extra deductions that they didn't have before. That's the financial gains that you can plug in to the calculator. And I mean, imagine, instead of being like, well, I'm a commodity at 1,000 a month without having anything to show for it, I can say, I I found you $30,000 in extra deductions this year
Mhm.
and reduced your bottom line. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Right?
So, because you get what you pay for with bookkeeping sometimes. And if you have a bookkeeper who's actually paying attention to the numbers and, asking questions, like we've had clients who, didn't put credit card, like didn't attach credit cards to
Exactly.
their books, for example. And when that happens, you're not bringing in all those expenses that are legitimate business expenses that could have
Yeah.
been bringing the profit down. So, there's value to be added in pretty much any service.
Mhm.
So it's really about thinking what you do for the your clients at the end of the day. Um, have you worked with any businesses that are outside of the accounting realm in talking about value pricing?
No, not so far. So I've been using this method for almost a decade in my own practice. And then when I created TaxPlanIQ, we have this calculator in there for tax advisors. Something really exciting is coming in the next month or so. One of our main governing orgs of CPAs, hint,
Mm.
hint, is mass releasing this calculator and my ROI method to all accountants out there. And so it's really going to solidify the fact that it's like completely ethical. It's in fact, I think, more ethical than hourly or fixed fee billing. It's
Mm.
not contingent fees, which is something that CPAs get concerned about charging. You're not supposed to. And so I'm really honing in on getting the word out to accountants first. But then, I mean, who knows? The sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
Because it can apply to so many different types of services. And I love the idea of helping people find that ROU, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think we work with a lot of creative agencies, and it's like, what is the value of um, a well-run marketing campaign, or what is the
Mhm.
value of a logo that is going to be put everywhere, that's going to be your representation of your company in every single place that you show up. There's
Yeah.
lots of different things for businesses to be thinking about when you're thinking about that value pricing. I'm curious how you handled the client change management when you were like, "Hey, we've always worked this way." Maybe it was the tax return. Maybe you had to list prices for, set prices for what you were doing. But then you gave the example of that one person that was very excited to pay you more money.
Mhm.
Um, I imagine that may have not been the reaction of everybody. So
Yes.
how did you handle that?
Yeah, there's the way I explain this, there's always going to be someone out there that doesn't understand a value proposition. The way they were raised or their money mindset, like we were talking about earlier, is just always focused on the expense or the cost. And so you can't convince everybody, and it makes you feel so bad for them because you're missing out on so much by not taking this proposition, but they just can't see past the 8 grand they need to pay now instead of the two to get find even more strategies and get the higher quality work and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I'd say 1 in 10 people probably can't overcome that.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I exported my list of clients from QuickBooks. This gets real, accounting geeky, but I went from like top revenue to bottom revenue for my clients. And I kind of just started down the list. My very first one that I converted was just honestly my favorite client. And I had saved him immediately 150 grand because he had self-prepared his 1040 wrong. And so I amended it, charged him hourly back in 2012 for it, and got him this huge gain. And so I knew he was a huge advocate for me. I loved working with him, and I thought if there's someone that I'm going to bring this to first, it's going to be someone that's a big supporter of mine. So
Mm.
he was kind of like in the middle of that list of exports. But then after that, I just started going down the list and I would create a proposal one by one of where I think I could find the tax savings, what I would charge, and what kind of package offering I would give them. And then I would pitch it. And, they'd either be like, yeah, let's do this, or they might say no. But at the end of the day, you as that business owner and salesperson or whatever, you have to decide, well, what do I do with that? And hopefully decide before the meeting.
Yeah.
So, if they say no, am I gonna allow that? Like,
Mm.
am I gonna be like, "Okay, fine, we'll just keep things as is?" Or is that gonna eat you to death and know, like, that you're not bringing the best service possible to the client? So for me, I was like, "We're transitioning 100% of our clients to this new service, and here's what I'm offering. It's totally fine if you don't wanna do it, and I'd be happy to refer you out if that's the case." And so, yeah, I mean, we lost a few clients, but the gains we had from the ones that stuck around were so much more substantial than what we lost.
Yeah, I mean, if you were, let's say you had 100 clients, even if 50% of them stayed, but you were
Right.
3 or 4xing whatever your billing was, that is a pretty substantial increase. And so I think that the focus there is that you also were able to be more fulfilled as well and doing the
Yeah.
good work for your clients. So like I think that's one of the things that as service providers, a lot of us are service providers because we wanted to help, you
Yeah.
know? But then like when you see opportunities that you can't do because you're just too swamped and you're
Right.
too overburdened, it basically like prevents you from being able to get to that place, which is the satisfaction of the work that you do. Um, and then really like you're using like a higher skill set as well
Hmm.
when you're doing that other stuff, like versus just compliance, where maybe you're just plugging numbers into your tax return and then you're reviewing it and then, whatever. It's churn and burn. You don't get to have those value added conversations.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding, and it really like reignites your kind of passion as to why you got into it to begin with. Or if you were like me and just kind of fell into finance and accounting and whatnot, I mean, it's helped me kind of align my purpose. And so it's amazing.
I love that. I think that the value pricing model is also fairly rare for people to be doing it and doing it well. So if you can really prove value and show that in your proposal process and show like how what you've been able to do for people, that when you present it well, I feel like that's probably half the sales battle
Oh,
there.
for sure. Yeah. The
Mhm.
visualization alone, I mean, it can be as simple as an Excel sheet of like savings, cost, ROI. That visual really just helps solidify it for anybody.
Mhm. What does Tax Plan IQ do for people?
Yeah. So TaxPlanIQ is kind of like a new market solution in a way because when you think of tax planning and tax planning softwares, they're actually again just tax projectors. So like BNA or the accountants that might be listening are familiar with some of these different projector softwares. It's just saying, hey, you're going to owe XYZ next year. And then you can play around with the numbers a little bit, but it doesn't give a whole lot of guidance as to how to reduce the liability. So TaxPlan IQ really just plugs in the gaps of all of the aspects of tax advisory that we're not getting the guidance that we need in. So it's got its own kind of learning management system. We've got 130 tax strategies in it with videos, education for the accountant or user. Financial advisors are actually using TaxPlan IQ now as well. It has client overviews and information for you to provide to them. The whole learning aspect is awesome. And then you've got the sales aspect. So it's producing these proposals with the ROI method that's showing that visual. And it's not just the one pager, but we have a full like PowerPoint presentation that gets customized for the client to explain the process. And then there's a full tax plan report that you can produce for the client as well as a deliverable. So
Mm.
those are kind of two main aspects. The third thing that I'd be remiss not to mention is just the community. So at the end of the day, software is just software, and we can make you a heck of a lot more efficient using that software. But with a topic as complex and as scary and as runaway as tax advisory makes everyone want to feel, our community is like the number one thing. So we've added so much continuing education, so much learning to where you cannot fail as a tax advisor. You are supported like 1,000% around how to sell it, how to implement it, how to make clients happy, all the tax technical stuff. And we just added that kind of subscription level this year, and it's been so successful. So we've been really happy with it.
That's huge because I feel like that would be one of the big things that would maybe people who haven't been doing tax planning and then they want to start doing it, having a group of people that they could go and ask questions to, or just like, say, hey, am I the only one who's thought of it this way? Or, whatever it
For
might be.
sure, yeah, and we
Community
get
is huge.
real deep and nerdy sometimes in those sessions, but that's what they need, if the advisor is recommending, an advanced strategy, we need to get in the weeds and make sure that that's gonna work out for them, and who else would they go to, right?
Mhm.
So, we get to be that community for them or that kinda, like, back office, which is pretty neat.
I love that. And so Tax Plan IQ is something that you have you founded that as well. Is that correct?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
during COVID.
Amazing.
I realized like, okay, my firm was super successful off of these changes that I made. I had already started coaching other accountants. I was doing some small group masterminds around changing and growing their practices. And I was like, you know what? The next step is just putting all of this into, one package software. So I went to a vendor of mine and I was like, hey, I'm a CPA by trade. I'm not a software developer. I love technology. I'm a huge tech geek. Can you take this vision in my head and put it into a software? And they did. I actually just paid them a royalty for it. So like percentage of sales. So I didn't have a huge upfront cost. And it was really like easy to kind of bootstrap. And we've grown substantially. Something that frustrates me it's first world problem. The valuation of running a software company is so much higher
Yes.
than my accounting firm. So I was 12 years into my accounting firm and it was worth about $1 million of ARR, right?
Yeah.
Annual recurring revenue. I was 1 year into TaxPlanIQ and it was already worth more than that.
Yeah.
So if you're out there like thinking which startup to go to next between professional services and software, I would go software, my friends.
Right. Yes, 100%. I think you had the foundation of understanding what the holes were in order to
Yeah.
develop a very great software though. So, like,
That's true. You're right.
no.
I needed that foundation to
Yes.
lift me on to yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You probably couldn't have just started out instead of your CPA practice. You probably couldn't have started and created like the valuable software that you've created today. But yes, 100% when you look at valuations of service firms, this is one of the things that I get on a little bit of a soapbox about because a lot of times people think that their business is going to be their retirement fund or they're definitely going to be able to sell it or like, they think about it in this like future thing. But services firms are fantastic and they can be wonderful cash flowing businesses for you. They can do a whole lot, but they aren't always as attractive to a buyer as something like a software. And the reasons for the valuation are for lots of different reasons, but software is much more scalable than service
Yeah.
businesses. And you can serve many more people on the same platform than just, when we grow services firms, we also have to grow our people.
Right.
The more clients we serve, the more people we need, and it increases expenses like that. So that's one of the reasons they're a lot more valuable. But yeah, I can understand kind of seeing that. But fantastic that you've already built a very valuable firm or a very valuable company after being, so new into it. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's not nearly as sexy as people make it seem to be like in software dev, but I've, grown a good team. I'm not sure, Hannah, if you practice or are familiar with EOS,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
Gino Wickman. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
practice EOS.
Fantastic.
It is taken us next level. We've done it for a couple years now, and I even hired a CEO in my place the beginning of this year. So I'm just president, founder extraordinaire, and I just get to go be the
Visionary.
visionary
Okay.
and do all the fun stuff. So
I love it.
it's a good time.
I love that so much. We actually are doing a 3-part series on EOS
Ooh,
because
love it.
we brought in an implementer to talk, and then my COO and I are talking about how we self-implemented for Clara CFO, and then also like how we work with companies as their CFO if they operate on EOS. So we
Ooh.
love working with EOS companies because
Yes.
we just see what they're able to accomplish and how organized it can be. So I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so as visionary in your role now, what does your day-to-day look like? What do your weeks look like as you're kind of in this phase?
Yeah. Well, for some silly reason, I decided to get a doctorate. It's not silly. It's because I love learning. I had organically grown this team of people and I had no idea how to lead them. Right. And I wanted to be a better leader. And so I started a doctorate program 4 years ago. Was able to kind of block my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays off. I time block extensively towards the doctorate. I just graduated from that.
Fantastic.
So,
Dr.
yeah,
Jackie.
Yes, Dr. Jackie. Yeah. So Tuesday, Thursdays are kind of like my full meeting days. We do our L10. I do one-on-ones, all the things that I'm supposed to be doing from the EOS perspective. I'm still heavily involved in enhancements for the software because that's kind of my zone of genius.
Yeah.
And so I work extensively with the dev team on that side of things. But yeah, and then I just get the word out, right? So I do some speaking gigs and whatnot and get on podcasts and try to convince people that tax advisory is a lot of fun. And
Huh.
that's that.
I love it because I think that also the solution that you've created, it is expanding the market to the like you mentioned at the beginning of this, that there's not that many people who are engaged in tax planning.
Mhm.
And there was that probably because there's a barrier there of,
Yeah.
how do you
So many
actually get
barriers.
into it? So you're breaking down a barrier by bringing a software solution to this, which I love. And I love that it's already getting a lot of adoption from our governing bodies that we will be mentioning. But um, I feel like that just makes it that much more, more of a success when you are, definitely being able to enable something that a lot of people need and a lot of people want and a lot of people are willing to spend money on. And it's a fantastic solution. So,
Yeah, I appreciate
mostly,
that. I
yeah,
think one other thing about that is, eventually in the perfect world, we would be able to bring down the cost of basic tax planning as well. So, because small business owners and, W-2s that make 50K a year deserve tax strategies as well. And so, I mean, that would be kind of the ultimate goal is we are able to help more people, but also like bring so much more value to the table across the board.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel that the brand of the CPA has been diminished
Yeah.
over a number of years where when people pay a professional like a CPA and then they don't get the results they're wanting or they don't get what they thought they were getting or they get somebody who never returns their phone calls or, all the things that happen with that has happened. I mean, there's fantastic CPAs out there that are doing amazing work, but then I feel like when we have bad experiences, it diminishes the brand. So I feel
Yeah.
like the things like this are exciting because they're like, oh, we can really help clients at the end of the day, and we can do it with what they really want,
Yeah.
not just more compliance work. You
For
know,
sure.
that's
And compliance work is going to become more and more automated, whether we like
yes.
it or not. I was just talking to um, another educator in the industry today, and they were saying they were talking to an accounting firm owner in Washington that serves farmers and whatnot in a rural area, and they're losing a lot of business because of the free file programs at TurboTax, and the IRS released their own free file program, stuff like that. And so they're essentially like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, my
Mhm.
business will shut down if I don't transition into higher value work. I'm like, well, I need to talk to them because there's tons of strategies for farmers.
Yeah.
And, that's such a value add. And so 5, 10 years from now, the people that are still stuck in the compliance work are going to lose their shirts, unfortunately, because it's just naturally going to get more AI driven.
Yeah. Because it's easier for that to be repeatable and it's easier for it to be, use machine learning for, transaction level
Exactly.
type things. And so, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. That's why, like, our CFO advisory services were like, AI is definitely a factor for sure. It's just what we do with clients is we build relationships and we understand their business and we can understand not just the mathematical reasons you might make a decision, but also the leadership reasons you might make a decision or the emotional reasons you might need to
Sure.
do that and understanding goals and trajectories and different things like that. So it's harder to plug numbers into a system and get a get answers on what you should do next
Mhm.
out of that. So that's why I think advisory is around for quite a long time. We have a longer tail on that before AI takes over our jobs. So
Yeah, I
um,
agree. I mean, there are automations we're already doing in the advisory field. Like
yeah.
you can upload a 1040, an individual tax return into TaxPlanIQ, and it will suggest 50 strategies. And I like mind mapped every single strategy of how I would identify it into like how, you could suggest it. But the relationship component, the gut feel component, the emotional component, like you said, that's all going to be so necessary. And it's really, really going to be that even that more vital in advisory, I think, in the future.
hmm Yeah, that makes sense. Relationships aren't going away, everybody. I think
No,
that's
they are not.
still very important. As we provide these services directly to people, there will always be a people aspect that we need to be here for. So, well, this has been super helpful. Thank you so much for answering all these questions about value pricing and tax planning.
Sure.
Uh, and before we go, I want to make sure that people who want to learn more about you go to the right place. So your website is jackie.cpa. And then also, if anybody's interested in learning more about TaxPlanIQ, you can go to taxplaniq.com. Is that
Sure.
right?
And
Okay.
if you happen to be interested in that ROI workbook, I have a complimentary copy that I'm previewing out from our site. So taxplaniq.com/ROI dash method, and you can download it.
I love it.
I
I love it.
blinked for a second there. Sorry.
Well, what? You don't have all your URLs perfectly
Right. I
memorized?
know. I know.
Dr. Jackie. That's something. No, just giving you a hard time. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely go and check her out, and also follow her on LinkedIn as well, because there's lots of good stuff on there. I follow you on LinkedIn and
Thank
was
you,
just
Hannah.
browsing
Yes.
that earlier and was very much entertained. So, all right. Well, Jackie, Dr. Jackie, thank you for being here on the Financial Clarity Podcast, and look forward to the next time we chat.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.